Hi there, lovely people. Good to have you here. Welcome to another Holy Shed. And I do hope that you are well, wherever you are, whatever it is you're getting up to. And I hope you're surviving all the craziness that's going on out there this time of year. There are good things too, aren't there? I had a lovely Christmassy experience this week. Dear friend Susie, who served as a church warden for most of my time as vicar of St Luke's in North London, she's a teacher, and she asked if I would talk to a couple of classes at the school where she teaches. Well, a confession. I find children both delightful, exciting, and terrifying. And they were year fours, around 8 or 9. And when Susie asked right at the beginning if they had any questions they'd like to ask of their visitor, a gorgeous young girl put up her hand and she said, "How old are you?" Now, you see, that's why they terrify me right there. You've no idea what's going to come out of their hair, out of their mouth, what it is they're going to say next. So, how old do you think I am? I said. And she thought for a moment and then said, "About 99." Well, there you go. They were absolutely lovely, and I had a fab time. It's amazing how kids quieten down and pay attention once you start telling them stories. And they were great, and it was good to be back working with Susie in that way. For years and years, we looked after Christmas morning with the kids, and lots of other places where we were talking to kids, and she breathed confidence into me. Anyway, it was good. As I said last time, during Advent, I am reading you some draft scripts that will be interspersed, pieces that will be interspersed through my book of prayers, which will be published in March. The book will be called OMG, A Bad Christian's Book of Prayers. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about its release later on. But to begin with, I'm going to read you one of my prayers, which I've read here in the shed before. It's a winter prayer. It's called "Dear God, I don't like cold weather." And I'll put it on the screen for you. Dear God, I don't much like cold weather, but I do like warm socks, porridge, and the smell of mulled wine. And I do enjoy having lots more birds in the garden, like the woodpecker I saw today, who never visits except on days like this, to peck furiously on the peanuts. And then there's the feeling of crisp, fresh air clearing my nostrils, and crunchy leaves under my feet, and sitting next to a roaring fire in the pub, and comfort food that's never so comforting in summer. All in all, I'm glad we have cold weather. The perfect excuse to stay in my dressing gown, almost hibernate, and watch Netflix in the daytime without feeling guilty. I love the quiet in winter too, especially when out in the snow at night. I think winter's a time to listen instead of speaking so much, to sit in a corner and hear my own thoughts, to clear out some of the rubble I've accumulated, like the voices that say I could have tried harder, been a better person. Cold days are an opportunity to hug myself, arms wrapped around my chest for warmth. Maybe I can hug myself on the inside too. Tell me how much I like me. Muster the courage to stand up in the world, to say, "Hey, this is me. I'm here. I'm okay." Dear God, I think I like cold weather, really. So here's what I've been writing this week. It's called "The World Is My Prayer Stool." Now, as you'll gather from the prayers that I write that are included in the book, which I use here in the shed, I love trees. And one of my tip-top favourite trees is a huge copper beech at Barrington Court in Somerset, just a mile or so from here. We pass it frequently on one of our regular walks. Stepping beneath its magnificent foliage is a bit like entering an enormous tabernacle or a great marquee. I did recently comment to a friend that we could probably hold a small festival under its branches. As a young prince King Charles was derided in the press when he revealed that he sometimes talked to trees. Well, I'm no prince, but I'm happy to admit that the copper beech at Barrington is not the only tree I regularly speak with. And there can surely be no better place on earth to pray than sitting, standing, or even kneeling under the boughs of an enormous tree. For me, trees are as much a sacrament as any bread or wine that I have consecrated on a church altar. Daily, trees give me their own unique Holy Communion. And not just trees, any part of this beautiful earth can serve as a sacrament, connecting us with God if we pause long enough to allow that. Sometimes, as you know, I pray with icons, especially modern icons, like Kelly Lattimore's wonderful Holy Family, which, as you can see, pictures a refugee couple with a child walking urgently through a moonlit night. Well, placing the original Holy Family in this context, the context of three haloed figures, helps me to stay mindful of one of the most pressing emergencies of our time. But in fact, I find trees and birds and flowers, skies and storms also to be powerful icons, which evoke a mindful connection with the divine right there in nature. I'd go further, really, to say that life itself, in all its diversity and its many shades, can be icons and sacraments. I'm not simply talking about, the highlight experiences and occasions in life, but the mundane and the challenging parts too. All of which says a lot about my personal understanding of the God to whom I pray. Not a distant, out there kind of God, not a God elsewhere in heaven, not a God simply of religion, but more of a profound presence in the world at every level. Present, for example, in the creatures and countryside all around, present in the beauty and ugliness of urban life, a God who's present in the joys and struggles of cultural experience, in art and music, cinema, education, work and politics, a God who's present in the routines of ordinary everyday life, present in birth, weddings, family, relationships, getting laid. A God present in healing and well-being. A God also present in death. And present in all the rest of life, which I haven't mentioned here. I think that too often we've lost sight of what I'd call the magnificent carnality of a God embodied in the physical world, and instead turned to a bland, spiritualized God elsewhere in the heavens. And this whole thing traces back to an ancient dualistic or binary split between the realms of the physical and the spiritual. Throughout the history of the Church, from Clement of Alexandria and Origen, down through Augustine, right to the present day, a damaging dualism has characterized much, maybe most, of Christianity. And the outcome is a kind of dislocated spirituality in which there's suspicion of the physical world, and especially suspicion of bodies and bodily desires and appetites. Sam Keen, an American popular writer on spirituality, describes his personal dilemma of realizing that neither religion nor secular culture gave him a satisfactory framework in which to understand his identity as a physical being in a material world. I'll put up on the board what he says here because it takes a little bit of absorbing. What has happened to me, he asks. How am I to understand this warmth and grace which pervades my body? As I begin to reflect, I realize that neither the Christian nor the secular culture in which I've been jointly nurtured have given me adequate categories to interpret such an experience. Neither has taught me to discern the sacred in the voice of the body and the language of the senses. In the same measure, the Christian theology has failed to help me appreciate the carnality of grace. Secular ideology has failed to provide me categories for understanding the grace of carnality. Before I can understand what I've experienced, I must see where Christian theology and secular ideology have failed me. It's great stuff. And what he's calling the carnality of grace really amounts to the realization that we never encounter God outside of our fleshly experience. All grace is embodied. And we discover the divine, therefore, in sunshine and rain, in cream cakes and green vegetables, especially cream cakes, in bread and wine and water, in lovemaking, in digging the garden, in a hot bath, dirt beneath the fingernails. We are embodied beings living entirely within a physical world. And whilst God is far greater than the sum of physical things, God, or divinity, does reside in dirt and delight, in passion and tears, in green grass and furry creatures. And if we can't discover the carnality of grace, then I don't think we're going to discover grace at all. Putting it the other way round, as he does, the grace of carnality is the recognition that the world is infused with divine spirit, and that our sense of meaning and purpose as human beings rests on the discovery and connection with that spirit. The grace of carnality is the realization that the entire universe is a sacrament, a means of connecting us with God, the ground of our being. We don't need to be narrowly religious or even believe in God in order to experience the sacramental presence of God. But we do need to have the sense that life is about more than our own ego-driven passions and desires, that life is about love and relationships, gratitude and humility, awe and wonder, curiosity. It's about much more than just skating across the surface of physical existence. It's about touching the depth of things, feeling the heights. Nicholas Harvey, who's a writer and a former Catholic monk, he relates an experience from his earlier life when there was a discussion in his religious community over whether it was acceptable to spend the time of prayer walking in the monastery garden. Well, one of his colleagues thought it was, provided, he says, provided you do not get seduced by the sunset. Well, Nicholas was, I think, justifiably puzzled by that comment. He thought, as I do, that being seduced by the sunset, by birds and trees and grass and all of this stuff, is a pretty good thing, really. It's a pretty good idea. And that reminds me of a week that I spent with our friend Stuart in Yorkshire at the ramshackle cottage that we used to rent, which is a mile from the nearest road, with no electricity or gas or other services. And the reason we were there, Stuart at the time was a chaplain in the Royal Marines, and he asked me if I would lead him on a spiritual retreat, and we decided the cottage was the perfect place. Well, on our last day, joined by Pat and by Stuart's wife Laura, we decided to say evening prayers outside under the stars. It had been a lovely crisp autumn day, and we had been feeding a fire outdoors all afternoon whilst chatting and thinking. And then by 5:45 p.m. it was dark but still quite mild, so we huddled around the fire with just about enough glow to read our prayer books. And as we prayed, two owls repeatedly called to each other across the valley, and a delightfully slender quarter moon peeped over the hill opposite, not bright enough to obliterate the gradual unveiling of the Milky Way overhead. I think it's fair to say that we were seduced by the whole experience, and then further seduced by an evening in the pub for a meal, a pint of Yorkshire's best, a game of cards, and an awful lot of laughter. I think there are many sacraments in the world. I commented earlier about the carnality of God, which may sound shocking given carnality's negative religious connotation. But carnal simply means of the body. And actually, as I said earlier, God comes to us always embodied or enfleshed in some way or other. At Christmas, we celebrate the incarnation, the flesh and blood revelation of God in the birth and life of Jesus. But as Archbishop William Temple wrote in the early 20th century, all of this is only possible because the universe itself is an organ of God's self-expression. It is, he said, the fundamental sacrament which could result in the incarnation in Christ. But the important thing, I think, is that the incarnation must not become sort of a frozen event, a one-off frozen event in the past with the original coming of Jesus. Incarnation, God being present in the physical and material world, occurs, I'd say, in a million ways every single day across the globe, which doesn't diminish the wonderful reality of God in Christ, as it were. It simply enhances it. So in its own way, the lovely copper beach of Barrington Court brings divinity into our world, causes me to pray or open up within to the presence of God. And as I hope is reflected in my prayers that I'm putting together in the book, I find the whole world to be like a chapel where prayers are evoked at every corner. Sometimes prayers of awe and wonder, sometimes of gratitude, sometimes of frustration and anger at the way I see some of my fellow humans behaving, sometimes prayers of compassion and longing. Why? Because the world is my prayer stool, far more so than anything inside of a church building. I love that too. But the world is what does it for me. The world is my prayer stool. So here's another little prayer. Spirit of God, breath of all creation, which from the dawn of time is recycled 1 billion times each day in the lungs of creatures great and small, may we inhale every newly created breath with excitement, joy, and expectancy, relishing each moment as our last, breathing life in, then letting it go. Amen. Well, I mentioned earlier about, the book's publication, which, as I said, is going to be early on in March and is going to coincide with a retreat that I'm leading at Amadown Retreat Centre, also in Somerset. It's a wonderful, beautiful place that is very special to me, and leading a retreat based on the book called OMG, A Christian's Guide to Prayer. So it's from Monday to Wednesday. If you can join me, I would love it. If you can get other people to come along and join us, that would be even better still. Now, I've put the website of Amadown on this slide. In point of fact, they haven't put next year's events on their website yet, but I believe that it's going to happen very, very soon. So just keep looking, and as I say, it'll appear, I was told it would be by the end of this week, but we'll see. So yeah, If you can join me for that, that would be fantastic. So I think what we're going to do now is just have a simple toast. If you've got a drink there with you, then I invite you to take it now. And I propose a toast to meeting God where we least expect. A toast to trees, friends, and good books that make us feel that God is not far away. A toast to hope in a world that sometimes can feel pretty hopeless. To life, l'chaim. And that's just about it. So thank you very much for being here with me. If you like what I'm doing here in the Holy Shed, you can support us. You can buy us a coffee. You just need to follow the link on the site here, and we really appreciate all the sources of support and encouragement that you give to us. What else? Well, just say that on Wednesday at 12:30, midday-ish like, I'm leading a soul space at St. Athelberger's online. It's a Zoomed one, and you can find the link on the St. Athelberger's website. I will be posting it as well before. So if you can join me for that, that'll be a seasonal soul space. That'd be great. I think that's just about it, really. Besides which, I'm getting tongue twisted. So thanks for being here. Have a great week. Whatever you're doing, be kind. Be kind most of all to yourself, because out of that, when you hug yourself, you can begin to hug the world round about. Stay human. And I'll see you soon. I'm going to leave you with a lovely blessing.